Let me tell you something that will completely flip the script on everything you think you know about attraction. If there's one thing that consistently makes a woman chase, one thing that draws her in again and again, it's this: a man who is led by his purpose, not by his desire for her. It sounds simple, but most people get this completely backward. See, when you make her your mission, you lose your magnetism. When everything you do, every text, every plan, every glance is oriented around gaining her attention, you stop being a challenge and start being predictable. And predictability kills attraction, not because women are inherently difficult or hard to please, but because at a psychological level, we are wired to value what is rare, not what is readily available. A man who is focused on his purpose radiates a different kind of energy. It's not that he's ignoring her or being cold. It's that he's immersed in something larger than himself. His ambition, his goals, his self-mastery, that's what makes him compelling. That's what makes her stop and wonder, what's he building? What's he becoming? And how can I be part of it? Now let's go a bit deeper. From a psychological standpoint, people are drawn to those who are self-directed. A 2015 study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that autonomy, not dominance, not wealth, not even physical attractiveness, was one of the most consistently attractive traits. Why? Because autonomy signals security. It shows that you're not emotionally dependent on someone else to feel whole. You're not chasing validation, you are the validation. And from a philosophical perspective, it's the same principle. The ancient Stoics believed that the highest form of virtue is living in accordance with your telos, your purpose, your essential nature. For a man, this means developing strength of character, clarity of mind, and emotional discipline. It means you wake up each day with a sense of direction that isn't thrown off course every time she takes too long to reply to your message. Look, I'm not saying don't care. I'm not saying detach completely and pretend to be unbothered. That's just another form of performance. What I'm saying is this: center your life around something bigger than her. Make her want to chase you. Not because you're playing games, but because your life is so full, so rich, so alive, that she can't help but want to be part of it. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing, when you stop putting her on a pedestal, that's exactly when she starts chasing you. Not out of manipulation, but because the psychological frame has shifted. You're not seeking her out for approval. You're inviting her into your world. And that, my friend, is far more powerful. Women don't want to lead the emotional dynamic. They don't want to feel like they have to hold the weight of your self-worth. They want to feel your presence, your direction, your emotional sovereignty. When you bring that energy, when you become a man who lives with intent, she will not only chase you, she will respect you. And respect is the foundation of long-term attraction. Without it, you're just a momentary distraction. With it, you become unforgettable. So stop making her the mission, make your mission the mission. Because when you lead with purpose, you never have to pursue love, it finds you. Let that sink in. Let's talk about value, and more importantly, perceived value. Because in the realm of attraction, it's not just about who you are, it's about how you carry who you are. One of the most common mistakes men make in dating is putting a woman on a pedestal from day one. They lead with admiration, with flattery, with pursuit. And while that might seem romantic in theory, in reality, it often reads as low value. Here's the truth. People chase what they perceive as valuable, not what seems readily available. It's human nature. We don't pursue what's constantly in our face. We pursue what appears selective, rare, and self-contained. This is why the moment you start acting like she's the prize, you've already shifted the dynamic, and not in your favor. Now, don't misunderstand me. Recognizing a woman's beauty, her intellect, her presence, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, mature attraction starts with genuine appreciation. But here's the critical point. You can admire her without reducing yourself in the process. You can be impressed without being impressionable. And when you hold that balance, you flip the script. Becoming the prize starts with identity. Who are you when you're not trying to impress anyone? Who are you when no one's watching? When you step into a room, do you command attention through your energy, your posture, your self-awareness? Or are you constantly scanning for cues of approval? Psychologically, this is about self-concept. People with a strong, stable self-concept naturally exude confidence. They don't seek validation because they've already validated themselves. That confidence is what creates polarity. It creates intrigue. Because when a woman sees that you're not chasing her, not trying to win her over, she begins to wonder, why not? What does he know about himself that makes him so grounded? That curiosity leads to pursuit. Think of it this way. When you enter a luxury store, the items aren't jumping off the shelves begging to be bought. They're displayed with space around them, clean lighting, no urgency. The message is clear. This item is valuable, and if you want it, you'll need to qualify yourself to it. The same principle applies in attraction. Be the man who doesn't need to prove, only to reveal, over time, the depth of who he is. And here's where the philosophical depth comes in. The ancient philosopher Socrates once said, "Know thyself." That wisdom isn't just about introspection. It's about stability. When you truly know your worth, when your confidence isn't loud but deeply rooted, you become unshakable. And that kind of man, the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't overreact, doesn't compete for attention, is magnetic. Now you might be thinking, so I should just sit back and do nothing? No. This isn't about apathy. It's about posture. It's about moving from a place of self-respect rather than desperation. You're not passive, you're selective. You're not cold, you're centered. And that distinction changes everything. The irony is, when you stop treating her like the goal and start treating yourself like the standard, she feels safer, more intrigued, and more drawn to you. Because you're not placing pressure on her to validate you. You're offering her the chance to experience you. And that's a very different energy. So become the prize. Not by pretending, not by playing games, but by actually embodying the mindset that your life is already full. That love, while beautiful, is not your source, it's your surplus. The man who needs nothing commands everything. Attraction isn't built through constant access. It's built through emotional tension, through a subtle dance of presence and distance, revelation and restraint. If you want her to chase, to lean in with curiosity and interest, you need to understand one thing. Certainty kills desire, and mystery, when done right, is magnetic. You see, we're wired to seek what we don't fully understand. That's not just romance. It's human nature. The brain is designed to resolve uncertainty. When something is familiar and predictable, the mind relaxes. It gets comfortable. It disengages. But when there's just enough unpredictability, when there's emotional texture, it creates tension. It keeps the mind active, engaged, hooked. This is why the guy who tells her everything up front, lays all his cards on the table, and tries to win her with openness alone often ends up in the friend zone. He thinks honesty means total exposure, but what he's really doing is robbing the connection of mystery. And mystery isn't about withholding for the sake of games. It's about pacing. It's about letting things unfold naturally rather than forcefully. When you create emotional contrast, when you can be deeply present in one moment and slightly unavailable in the next, you create intrigue. She starts to wonder what you're thinking, what you're feeling, where your attention is. That wondering is not manipulation. It's what makes people feel emotionally alive. Because too much emotional predictability leads to boredom, not security. There's a principle in psychology known as the reward uncertainty effect. It's the reason gambling is addictive and cliffhangers work. The idea is simple. When rewards are random or intermittent, they feel more intense. A message from someone who always replies the same way at the same time doesn't stimulate emotion, but a message from someone who's present, then elusive, Someone who gives just enough to spark curiosity, that interaction lingers. It creates an emotional imprint. And philosophically, this ties back to the idea of polarity, the dance between the known and the unknown. Masculine energy at its core is about grounded presence. Feminine energy thrives on movement, emotion, and unpredictability. When you show up with presence, but avoid becoming completely predictable, you create a polarity that feels dynamic. That tension pulls her in, keeps her invested, keeps her chasing, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're not giving everything away for free. The mistake most men make is thinking they need to constantly reassure her, constantly give more, constantly explain themselves to be liked. But that just dilutes your essence. It makes your energy feel thin. A man with depth, who isn't in a rush to be fully seen, who reveals himself over time, layer by layer, feels real. He feels worth discovering. And women don't want a man who needs to be understood in the first 5 minutes. They want a man who makes them want to understand more, who invites them into discovery. So how do you apply this? It's simple. Be real, but don't be immediate. Share, but don't overshare. Be present, but not overly available. Let your energy breathe. Let silence speak. Let her feel the pull of not knowing everything about you all at once. Because the moment you become fully accessible, you lose the psychological space where attraction lives. Mystery isn't about being distant. It's about being dimensional. Give her something to feel, but leave her with something to wonder. That's what makes her chase, every time. Now let's talk about something that most men struggle with. Withdrawal. Not ghosting, not cutting someone off to prove a point. I'm talking about intentional space, deliberate distance, the kind of silence that doesn't come from disinterest, but from emotional discipline. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Attraction needs room to breathe. And in that space, something powerful happens. Desire is born. But if you're always available, always initiating, always reaching out first, you don't leave her the psychological space to feel your absence. And until she feels your absence, she can't fully register your value. Think about it. In almost every emotionally significant relationship you've had, when did you start realizing how much someone meant to you? Was it in the middle of constant conversation? Or was it in the quiet moments, when they pulled back? When you couldn't access them as easily, when your mind started to wander back to them unprovoked? That's how emotional bonding works. We don't attach to constant presence, we attach to meaning. And meaning requires contrast. When you're always present, your energy blends into the background. But when you step back just enough, when you give her space to feel, to wonder, to notice, you give her the opportunity to pursue. Now, this isn't about disappearing to manipulate. It's not about punishing her for not texting first or waiting 3 hours to respond as some strategy. That's performative. That's fear disguised as control. What I'm talking about is authentic non-neediness, a natural withdrawal that comes from being busy, being fulfilled, and not making her attention your emotional oxygen. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called reactance. It refers to the emotional pushback we feel when we sense something being taken away or becoming less available. It's the mind's way of protecting freedom and regaining control. So when a man is always around, always chasing, always filling the space, there's nothing for her to push against. But when he steps back, not out of anger but out of composure, it triggers that emotional reactance. She starts to feel the shift. She starts to lean in. And let's go deeper philosophically. The Taoists talk about the power of emptiness, how the empty space in a cup is what makes it useful. In the same way, emotional space in a relationship is what gives the connection shape and texture. Without that space, the bond becomes flat, saturated, and anything oversaturated loses its flavor. Men often fear withdrawal because they think it will make them less desirable, but it's the opposite. When you pull back with intention, it shows strength. It shows you're not anxious, that your life is still moving with or without her, and that's incredibly attractive, not because it creates insecurity in her, but because it reminds her that you are whole, that you are not dependent on her for emotional direction. This is where maturity separates the boys from the men. The boy panics when communication slows down. The man leans back and lets energy recalibrate, because he understands that if a connection is real, it doesn't need to be constantly fueled. It needs to be felt. And feeling can't happen when there's no space to miss, no time to reflect, no silence to wander in. So learn to withdraw, not as punishment, but as presence in your absence. Let her feel what it's like when you're not always one message away. Let her notice the difference between attention and presence, between noise and energy. Because when she feels that shift, when she senses that your attention isn't automatic, that's when she starts chasing you, not out of ego, but out of genuine pull. Sometimes the most